You know, as much as I really enjoy playing with these tools, I think this is actually going to be the biggest difference between success and failure. Hello, and welcome to the Infinite Inkwell, or welcome back to the Infinite Inkwell. I'm Lewis, and I'm on a journey to discover new ways to tell stories. Up until this point, I've been looking at doing that through a video game. I've no technical skill. This is my first time doing anything particularly technical, and I'm really excited to be doing it. Now let's go through a quick recap. Last time, I finally settled on a game engine. I'm going to be building with Godot, which is really exciting. There's been some really awesome stuff kicking about the engine. It feels really intuitive, and I think it's going to be an exciting time. Before I get too bogged down into building in Godot, I need to have a plan, and that's what today's all about. So I already have my game design document prepared. I know it's not a final document, it's going to evolve over time, but I've got a lot of the important stuff in there, so I know roughly what I'm going to be building. I now need to work out how I'm going to chunk up my game so that I can prioritize content. Which bits do I need to build first? So I've spent most of the last 10 years working in product. So product is just a name for the department that runs development teams and enables them to build cool stuff. So most of the apps and websites that you use will have been built by product teams. I head up product teams. I'm chunking stuff up in ways that are familiar to me. So I'm utilizing my work skills to do something that's kind of fun for me. So let me walk you through how I'm going to do that because it is a little bit different. I'm breaking things down into 3 different layers. So at the top layer, I have my component types. So these could be locations or environments. They might be NPCs and general level construction, so actually putting together the chapters of the game. So that's the way that I'm constructing it at the highest level. The reason for this is that I thought, well, by grouping things like locations, I can go, great, these are all the locations in the game, and I can build out each of them so that it's ready to go. So the first one is going to be the home location. And once I've built out all of the elements of the home location, it falls into done and it's a tick box on my locations. I might have 10 locations. Once all 10 are done, the locations component is completed. I don't have to do it anymore. I can move on. Now I'm expecting these to shift and move, and I'll show you how I'm tracking that in a minute. My next level down are my features. So these are the different parts of those large component types. So as I said before, using locations as an example, home would be one of them. That would be a feature. Then I know I'm going to have a supermarket level. So that will be another. I know I'm going to have a bar. That will be another. So I'll have lots of these features which all roll up into that locations and environments bucket. Then there's my bottom level, or what I'm saying is my bottom level, but might have some additional elements too, which I'll cover later. And that is the tasks within a feature. Every feature will have at least 4 tasks. And some of those tasks might have subtasks depending on the complexity of the feature. So at the moment, everything has these 4 things: exploration and ideation. This gives me the opportunity to have a few ideas around what I want to be looking at. So I can play with different interpretations of what home might look like before I finally settle. And then when I do settle on my design, I actually have that as my next step: design and creation. Design and creation is actually going from all of those ideas and tests into actual final sprite elements that I'll be using. So any of the tile maps, sprites, any illustrations that are going to be going into that is where I would do it. And this could apply for everything, right? So any object that needs to have different states, I'll have to draw all that in that set of tasks, or that task bucket. So you can see why I might need subtasks, right? So if I have different states, so for instance, if I'm looking at an NPC, the NPC might move or have some kind of animation, I'm probably going to need to have subtasks in there making sure I cover all of the different animations. So that's 2. Then we have 3, build and configure. Build and configure is super important because it's actually how it's going to work within the game engine. So this would be, in the instance of a player character, adding that player character node and all of the associated designs that go with it. So each of the different states. So you might have a rest mode, that gentle movement that we see in a lot of games when you're not moving. So I'm going to have that rest mode, but then I'm going to have, moving left, right, up, down. But then I might have moving in diagonals. I might have a jump, and those things are going to require configuration and building into this. And that might just be for the base model of the character. So that would be what I would do as part of build and configure. And then finally, and really this is super important, QA. Does it actually do what it needs to do? If it does it, great. If it doesn't, I have to go back and make the changes. And I have to make the notes around why it didn't work or the instances in where it didn't work. So I can go back and look at those individually. Now, as I complete these, I'm hoping to go through and understand what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong and things that I can add to it later. Whilst I'm going to have one which is around the player character with a base model, I know that I'm probably going to have to go back and add stuff to it later. So that will be the base model done for the player character, but it's going to be missing things like an inventory system. I can build on an inventory system later, but I need the base model first. Now, that's enough talk about it. Let me show you how I'm going to do this and how I'm going to manage this workload, because I've not seen anybody do it like this before. So this is my Notion. Now, in here, I've got my game design document, my component types, features, and tasks. So these are the things that I was talking about. My game design document we've gone over in the past. I'm not going to revisit that today. But what I am going to look at is these three. So in my component types here, you can see that I have a very, very simple table. I'm going to actually start fleshing this out, but right now I don't need to just yet. I'm going to add more to this later. You can see I have my different component types here. So my locations, NPCs, collectibles, and so on. Now underneath it, I have my features. So any of those pieces, so as I mentioned, like a home location, both the daytime and a nighttime edition. One of my earliest collectibles is actually just going to be an apple. And then of course the base model for my player character. Now this progress bar will actually automatically update for me based on the completion status of these two elements. So as I get more features, this will automatically fill my progress bar so I can see how close I'm getting to finishing the game. I have got an average down here, which will give me everything when I get to 100. This should read 100. So an average of all the progress. So how close am I to finishing the game? At the moment, none of these have any detail in them. So if I open them up, you can see there's not a lot in them. You can see what it relates to. It's empty. But these will be populated over time as I start to fill out different parts of it. Some of that will migrate from my game design document, but it will be ready at some point. So now let's have a look at the features. Now in here, you can see that I've already got the 4 features that I've spoken about. And underneath each of these, you can see that it refers to where does this fall into? So that big component type, what bucket does it fall in? Then what it is, the tasks underneath it, and the t-shirt size. So t-shirt sizing I'm using at the moment to understand how much effort might go into doing this task. So if I have a vague idea, I'm going to put in an estimate. So this estimate is going to be pretty much finger in the air. So in this instance, I reckon that this first environment of home is probably going to be a large task because it's going to require a lot more exploration and ideation than, say, the night version of it, because I'm not going to need to do that much in the way of exploration and ideation apart from some of the color tones and how I want that to work. So that will be a big difference, meaning it should be less effort. There's a lot of assumptions going into this, and I will regularly check in with myself, like, is this right? Am I getting these estimates right, or am I getting them quite wrong? So I will bear that in mind. One of the next bits is the tasks that's underneath them. So every time I create a new feature, it automatically populates all of these tasks for me. So it creates those tasks so I don't have to worry about it, meaning that I shouldn't be forgetting any of the major tasks that I need to do for each feature. And then the status, this actually automatically calculates based on how these things are done. So if I've only done the exploration and ideation, then that will go to 25%. If I've done all of them, it's 100%. That's great. I'm very happy about that. But it gives me this live update so I can see what's happening. Now to automate this, I've actually used the automations that are built into Notion. So I automatically add tasks with certain tags, make sure that it relates to the feature that's just been created, who it's for. So me in this instance, I do this because I want it on my home screen when I first open Notion to tell me what tasks I need to be doing today, and then a status. So the status should be pretty default, but I wanted to have it in there anyway. And I did this for each of the tasks, meaning that I'll always have these major tasks done with the right tags in them. Yes, I'll have to go and customize some elements, but if I've got the placeholders in, that's great. That's a huge bit of work off my plate, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. So those are my features. Let's go take a look at the actual tasks and how this is managed. So here we go. Here are my tasks. This is a bit more comprehensive than the last lot. So you can see already that there's a huge number of tasks that need to be done for each of these, and this list will get quite heavy. Now, it will be heavy while things are still left to do. I think as I get on, I'll actually have less and less to do here, but this isn't going to be my default view. This is just the view that I have for this right now. What I will be using instead is actually the Kanban view. So at the moment, this isn't actually that useful, but I'm going to be making some changes to do this so I can see what's in progress and what's already been done. This will take a little bit of configuration, but not too much. It's one of the things I love about Notion is how flexible it is. So if I go back to my board here, I can see all of these relate to the apple and each one. I can set a priority. So this one's entirely for me to set. Is this a high priority piece that I do sooner rather than later? I might actually hide that for now. I don't need it, so I'm just going to drop it. Estimates. These are mildly contentious. So if I click on any of these, it's using story points. I've used story points when working with development teams in the past just to put a rough effort scoring next to something. And this is always going to be rough. It's not an exact science. But for me, I think just being able to do this and understand where the chunkier tasks are within a feature is going to be quite helpful. Because it might be that some days I go, you know what? I've only got a couple of hours. I'd like to finish something in that time. Maybe I just pick up a 2 or a 3, or maybe even a 1, just so I can feel like I'm making progress, particularly if it's been a heavy day. Then I have blocking states. So one of the things that I'm trying to work out at the moment is how do I add links between these things so there's always a blocking state. So design and creation will always be blocked by exploration, and they need to be done in a certain order to allow me to move forwards. And I can see what's blocking each thing. So this should be quite straightforward. I'd like to use it. I'm not sure I will, but it's something that's a nice to have for me. And then I have my subtasks. So it could be that my subtasks are, as I mentioned before, different parts of that base model animation. So if I'm doing the design and create, I need to make sure that I have my model ready for most actions, whether that is an up, down, left, right, a diagonal, a jump feature. If I'm going to have that, I need to have most of those states built out within that design and create. But I need to make sure that I have subtasks linked to it, particularly if it's something more complex like your character model. Not everything is going to be like that. So for instance, if I'm going to have a light that has an on and off state, I'm probably just going to want the lamp and then an on and an off state as the two subtasks within that. So those subtasks will be more helpful and contextual based on what I'm building. So that was a bit of a look around my Notion and how I'm going to be using this and how I'm going to be breaking stuff out. I know this is probably not the way that everybody's going to be thinking about these things, but I've done it this way because it's something I'm familiar with. It's something that I know can work elsewhere. And by breaking things up like this, they should be relatively reusable. So if there's stuff that I can borrow from each piece, so if now I've got an apple in there as a collectible feature, I can reuse that apple in different environments, in different settings, at different points. I might want to have different states to that apple, but I have that core of the apple. I think the way that I'm looking at this is that I'm batching nodes together and going, well, I know that underneath this particular scene, using the Godot terminology, so it could be a NPC, under that NPC, I'm going to have all of these child nodes, and this is going to be my thing. And that's kind of how I've grouped things here. So it makes sense in Godot, and it's starting to make more sense in my mind too. Because that's the way that I natively think for work, it's something that should really easily translate into building this game. Whilst this is not a sponsored video, I do have an affiliate link if you are interested in using Notion. I've been using it for a number of years. I've been shouting out about it in previous videos, but if you are interested, there's a link down in the description. I do recommend that you check it out. I use it for all sorts of things in my life. When I've been unemployed, I've tracked jobs with it. I've tracked my health in it, and even just some basic stuff like bills and budgeting, I've used Notion for. So do go check it out. One of the things I want to address is something that a lot of you have said in the comments is around building small games and making sure that I can build using modular components in a nice simple way. I'm actually hoping that from a modularity perspective, this will allow me to do that. And I can build out very, very basic MVPs. As an example, my first MVP is just having a couple of locations that my character can move through. It's just something simple, get from level 1 to level 10 and not have any problems. And then slowly add to it and build upon those things and enhance features, add extra collectibles or interactive objects to each of those worlds as I go through it. So it becomes very much an iterative build process. Now, one of the things that you'll have seen as my component types was mini games. One of the things that I'm looking at doing to help me learn more skills with Godot is actually utilizing mini games, having small little things you can do as a side task to gain XP to enable me to try something that falls outside of what I'm trying to build in a very, very, very small way so that I can go, oh, that's how I can build that. That's how I can build this thing. And slowly but surely learn these little pieces as additions to my game. So I end up learning lots of little things while keeping the core part of the game relatively simple. The mechanics in it aren't going to be crazy, but there will be some things that will add challenge. and elements of fun. But then the side mini games to earn XP will actually help flesh it out a lot and allow me to learn a lot more. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. It's how I've been thinking about how I address these problems and how I want to approach it. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. If you have any concerns or thoughts around my approach, stick them in the comments. I'm really keen to have this conversation with you and get feedback from people who have done this before and have experience of what it's like building a game around how they think about chunking things up and how you think about planning. How many of you do a lot of planning? It could be that I'm overthinking this. Do I need to plan? I mean, I definitely think I need to plan, but how do you tackle this problem? Would be really keen on having that conversation with you down in the comment section. So that's everything that I have for this week. Next week, I'm actually going to start picking up some of this stuff. I'm hoping to do some exploration and design on a location. I'm actually looking at building out the home level first, because there's no point in having a player if there isn't a home for that player to go and live in. So I want to build, or at least start to draw out what some of those things look like. So what I will do is I will try and either stream some of it or at least film it, because I'm going to be doing some of it with pen and paper. I've actually got some graph paper, quite nice out at the moment. So I might go for a wander and actually start drawing in the park, just putting down some of my ideas on paper and then starting to bring that together. You never know, I might actually finish that and look at maybe building it out in something like Sprite, which would be cool, and start to have some of that come to life. So that's going to be the next video. Thank you so much for watching this far, if you made it this far. If you did, hitting that like button would be incredibly nice of you. And if you want to come on the journey and to see what I'm building next, what's the next component that I'm going to be building, and you want to come on the journey, hit the subscribe button. It would be really great to have you along for the journey. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.